What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. I'm Warren Thompson, and here's the deal. I've always loved DC. DC has some of my favorite characters. In fact, Batman is my all-time favorite character right alongside of Thor. And DC is about to make a huge comeback, and I think we're about to live in a world not where DC and Marvel compete and are compared to each other, but a world where we get great content from both. Yes, the past has been rough for DC, and yes, Phase 4 wasn't so great to a lot of fans in the MCU, but Phase 5 and 6 should be great, and DC has a lot planned for their future. But most importantly, DC seems to have figured out a roadmap, and it's super awesome. So let's talk about DC's exciting future. Also, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We're going to be talking a lot about DC coming up, and of course Marvel as well. And if you're interested in the Marvel Legends giveaway, just subscribe to the channel and comment down below to be entered. Now, one thing that we have to be honest about is that despite whether you enjoyed Phase 4 or you didn't like some movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or you don't like any of them at all, you have to admit that their cinematic universe and the connectivity that it provided through all of their films was executed very well. In fact, they pretty much set the bar for it. And this is something that DC unfortunately has had problems with: connectivity and continuity. But I am happy to say that that is coming to an end, and the DCU, officially titled the DC Universe, DCU, is about to be a connected cinematic universe. And while DC isn't exactly copying Marvel, we are going to see two universes start to have the same format, as DC is now also going to have phases, and the overall connectivity of the universe is going to be so much better than it ever was before. Before, we never really knew much about what their plan was and what was connecting or not connecting, but now it's all about to be made very clear. And that's thanks to some big changes that DC has already made, starting with the biggest change, or I should say biggest two changes, and that is, of course, the iconic James Gunn and Peter Safran are now co-partners that officially have the helm in leading the projects when it comes to DC Studios. They're in charge. So, needless to say, Walter Hamada is no longer in that position and with the company, but James Gunn and Peter Safran have already done so much for and to DC with the short amount of time that they've held this position. Now, something that I do need to address first is that yesterday we did get some pretty shocking news. The news came last night that Warner Brothers was scrapping Wonder Woman 3 and Man of Steel 2. However, recent reports have come out stating that James Gunn simply didn't like the vision that they had for Wonder Woman in Wonder Woman 3, and he didn't think it was going to be that good. Apparently, he was supposed to be handed an entire script for Wonder Woman 3, but was only handed a few pieces of paper that didn't really do any justice to the character, so he kind of decided to scrap it. But he does have plans for Wonder Woman and the future of the DCU. I'm assuming it's a similar thing for Henry Cavill Superman, considering the fact that he just got back to the DCU and it was a pretty big deal to get him back. I'm assuming they're not just going to get rid of him altogether. I'm assuming what was happening is that Man of Steel 2 simply wasn't coming together the way that the DCU was going to be rebooted, and it didn't simply work with their plans. That does not mean Henry Cavill Superman is gone. They are simply doing what is best to fit these characters in proper stories in the DCU. So this is actually a good thing because these decisions are coming from James Gunn and Peter Safran. So I know a lot of people were panicking about these decisions, but I think they are good decisions. James Gunn has definitely been talked about a lot in the news recently, especially with him being the producer of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy and the director as well, and most recently the awesome Christmas special with the Guardians, but of course him also giving us the Suicide Squad for DC and the Peacemaker series, both of which were really awesome. However, some fans are upset why he is still a huge face for Marvel. However, he has a great response to those remarks. If you know anything about James Gunn, you know that he is active on Twitter and he calls people out a lot and he responds a lot. He basically wants to always have the record set straight. Here was his response to people telling him that he's still at Marvel when he's now in charge of DC. He said in a tweet, as was made clear in all press, "Until May, I am both DC and Marvel. I've dedicated the majority of the past 10 years of my life to the Guardians trilogy, and I'm not abandoning them or the thousands of people who worked on them at the 11th hour. The world won't end if you love both. And he's entirely right, and like I've mentioned, he's already done a lot for DC. So James Gunn will still be a part of Marvel until May, but since he is such a legend with what he's done with the Guardians of the Galaxy, he will always be a part of Marvel at heart. And let's not downplay Peter Safran, because he has produced big projects as well, like Shazam and the Suicide Squad, the second one that is, and even more on the horror side like Annabelle. And here's what's really cool. These two, James and Peter, will continue to help DC produce DC content rather than just overseeing everything. They're going to be hands-on involved. We also have to give some credit to Dwayne Johnson, aka Black Adam or The Rock, for helping DC out at a pretty big time. He brought us Black Adam, an action-packed film, and showed us that DCU film projects will now be released in phases, much like Marvel does, which is a great thing. But what's really awesome, of course, is that he brought back Henry Cavill. So you can see big changes being made at DC, but how exactly is it going to be so different than it was before? Well, for one, it is now in the hands of true fans and the people who are surrounding them, like The Rock and Henry Cavill, who really want to see this universe excel. People who have proven track records of making great superhero films and shows. Basically, we have experience and passion now, something that I feel DC kind of lacked before, in regards to the people and the executives behind making the movie decisions, that is. And another huge thing is that everything is going to be a lot more clear for the universe and how it's connected. In fact, right now, James Gunn and Peter Safran are working on what they call a Bible for DC. They are almost finished with it as well. And this is basically something that's going to help guide us through every part of DC and show how it's either all connected or not. This includes the films, TV shows, animated series, and games, which is another big announcement by James Gunn that is going to very much impact the DC universe in a great way. James Gunn tweeted that everything that DC is going to put out now is going to be tied to the DCU. That means the films and TV shows and animated series will all tie into the DC universe. Basically, like how Marvel does it with the MCU and how they are fluent across the board with their continuity. Now, James Gunn and Peter Safran will make things very easier and more exciting to follow throughout all the realms of DC. He even says that some video games are going to be tied to the DCU as well, which is really awesome. However, he did respond to another tweet about the video games being connected to the DCU, and his remark is that not all will be tied to it. So some video games. And this makes sense because sometimes it's okay to do one-offs or other things to branch out, but you could only branch out so far. That is, if you are going to have a truly connected universe. A perfect example of branching out is Robert Pattinson's The Batman, which is not connected to the DCU. It's a one-off project. Nonetheless, it was an amazing movie. But the bottom line is we are going to have more continuity and more connections in the DC universe. And to take this even further, it does look like they are going to kind of clean up some things that they've already done before. Because they're not going to completely erase everything that has happened before. Some stuff will still connect. However, we are going to be starting in phase 1. Black Adam technically was the first project of DC's phase 1. But they are still going to connect some things of the past, but they're going to have to clean it up a bit. And David Zaslav has said that there's not going to be 4 Batmans. So they're cleaning it up a bit just to make it less confusing, which is great, but also sad because I would have loved to have seen 4 Batmans on screen at the same time. But I think it's the right choice. One final thing that is worth noting is that Channing Dungey talked about closing a deal with Amazon to get animated series for DC on Amazon Prime Video. That would be another win for DC. So they definitely seem to have everything in place to make the DCU fantastic. And most importantly, they have the right people in charge now who have passion and experience in making good superhero movies, even great superhero movies. So the future is bright for DC. Hopefully, they can make a pretty big comeback, and it looks like they are. And I'm definitely here for it. I'm ready for it. I love DC. I love Marvel. You can love both. It's okay. And I'm ready for both of them to be amazing. But hey, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. What do you think about DC? Are they going to make a comeback or not? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more DC and Marvel news. For live updates, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.